In 1968, students at San Francisco State protested for and won the very first ethnic studies classes in the United States. Since then, ethnic studies has mainly been offered in colleges, until last year. On June 9, 2020, the Santa Ana School Board passed a resolution to require all high school students to enroll in a year-long ethnic studies class. And this year, the state followed suit and made it a requirement for high school students in the state of California. In the fall, students will have a choice of meeting the requirement in various ways. They can take the Ethnic Studies elective or an Ethnic Studies class in language or visual arts. Eventually, students will be able to take a total of 28 Ethnic Studies courses, ranging from language arts and history to math and science. Finally, students will also be able to take a career pathway of courses from 9th to 12th grade that will prepare them for a career in ethnic studies. So, with all of that being said, what is ethnic studies?
Ethnic studies is the study and discipline of the contributions, cultures, and histories of people of color within the United States, specifically the Asian Americans, African Americans, Latinx, and Native Americans. And this field of study is really critically important because all of these groups were part and parcel and critical in the building of the economy, culture, and society of this country. It's a healing class. It helps students heal from racism, is what it is. And so the way that it does that is it brings out, students' understandings. It brings out their their ancestral histories. Helps them focus on their identity.
In ethnic studies class, we try to find ways so you could tell stories, so you can look at history that you see yourself in. You come into the classroom, you are going to be centered as your identity, and then your family is finally going to show up in your education.
All throughout elementary, middle school, and high school, you're just like, how do I put it? Like, you're only given one piece of the jigsaw puzzle when it comes to history, and that's pretty much it. And I always grew up with the feeling of not belonging, I guess, because what we were taught mainly was just the Great Britain's coming here and building this country from the ground up, and that was pretty much it. But I never heard the stories of Hispanic folks, of Asian folks, none of that. So it was a big oh my god moment, because it really changed my outlook on everything.
Ethnic studies has impacted my identity by helping me understand what or who I am, because before the program I was just kind of am I Mexican American? Am I not Mexican American? I'm technically 5th generation. Does that mean I'm still Mexican American? But then after the thing, we learned about the different kinds of identities and everything like that, and it kind of helped me figure out my own identity.
Being born and raised here in the U.S., you have your identity of the home. And the identity of the home is one of being, for me, was Mexican. But once we left the home, we always had this second identity, right, of speaking English, even just in language. And so ethnic studies to me ends up being this process of understanding both identities, a space where I could learn where both realities are true to who I am.
But it also made me more aware and conscious of other people's different traditions and their values and where they may come from. And it does allow me to take a step back and allow me to reevaluate our interactions in a way, and to step away from stereotypes and implicit biases that I might have possibly carried.
Ethnic studies helped me to build relationships with other kids, because we were learning about all these things that happened, and we were kind of all learning about ourselves together and learning about each other together.
I've been a high school counselor here in the Santa Ana Unified School District now for 14 years. And in those years, we've offered ethnic studies here at Valley High School for 6 to 7 years, and I've seen the impact that it's had on students. More a sense of them learning about their histories, also learning about Santa Ana history, and how they could apply some of those theories that they've learned in the classroom, such as Why is there crime rate in Santa Ana? Why do gangs exist? They talk about the Mendez case, how there's segregation now, de facto segregation.
Is that we also look at the history like redlining, right? Where people of color were pushed into lower income neighborhoods, right? We look at how many people of color were not allowed to attend four-year colleges up until the 1960s. But what makes ethnic studies different from a multicultural studies program is that we also look at the history of European colonialism, right? And how it has created a legacy of a legacy of racism and a lot of discrimination, right? And how that inequality gets reproduced, right? Generation after generation. But through being resilient and being strong, we've been able to, many people of color have been able to break these barriers, right, and create a better society.
And it really informs you of the truth behind history, because to be honest, history is long and complicated. There's so many things that are happening, and for you to just know one side of it, it really affects the students, especially those that are of color, because you don't feel represented. And when you take ethnic studies, that changes. You feel like you belong here. You feel like you also have something to contribute, and it's a game changer for everybody,
If they take ethnic studies, they're going to be exposed to those histories, right? The histories of how the civil rights movement, the Chicano movement, the women of color movement. And so by learning those, they can begin to see how their communities were part and parcel of shaping what we now call civil rights.
When you walk these highways and you see some of these murals, kids have been told that racism is over, that Martin Luther King fixed everything, right? That's the U.S. history that happens, hey, racism is over, but it's not over.
I do allow students to make connections to current events, right, such as Black Lives Matter, and other ways in which they themselves still see institutionalized racism alive today and affecting them. So providing that safe space for students in the classroom to be able to talk about real issues that they see affecting them, that they are passionate about, empowers students, because ethnic studies is actually the combination of practice and thinking and knowledge. It'll create opportunities for students to go outside of the classroom and share what they're learning in the classroom with others, and actually further develop ethnic studies in Santa Ana.
When you look around your world and inside of you, you have those questions, and this is where you can start getting the answers to those questions. How can I make my community better? And to know that you have that spark. You are the person who makes the difference. You don't wait for someone, it's all in you, and you have that power. You might be talking to mayors, you might be talking to congressmen, you might be talking to the movers and shakers of your community. And so once you've gained that confidence, there isn't anything you can't do.
So ethnic studies really is about decolonizing the mind. It's it's so painful and so worth it, because it's just all those years being asleep and being awakened by ethnic studies. It's so I wish I started earlier.
I feel very proud that it's coming to Santa Ana, that the school district was one of the first to incorporate it as a requirement. And then here you have, the state already making it a requirement for everyone else. I think, I know people are afraid of it, but they shouldn't be, because it's not about creating anger. It's not about creating separation or discrimination. It's about empowering our children to recognize themselves in history.
Want to learn more? Talk with your counselor about how you can enroll in ethnic studies courses today.